Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching News Night on DD India, your prime-time destination for news and bespoke analysis. It's good to have you again with us. All right, on the show tonight, the last Trump-Biden debate was a spectacle unlike any other. Watched by tens of millions of people worldwide, the 90-minute show thankfully saw more clashes and less chaos. It was more restrained and less raucous than the first debate between the two. The debate saw some firsts as well. The mute button made its debut. Masks made an appearance. The audience, including Trump's wife Melania, wore a mask. And the moderator of the debate was a black woman, the first since 1992. Now, as the U.S. presidential election enters the last leg, we look back to understand where the U.S. might be headed come 3rd November and look ahead to appreciate why it is important for you and me as well. Also on the show, Bihar election gets into top gear as Prime Minister Modi flies down to Sasaram to launch NDA's campaign in the state. He addresses two more rallies at Gaya and Bhagalpur. Plus, news and updates from India and around the world, all that and much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. Bihar election campaign gets into top gear. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses rallies in Sasaram, Gaya and Bhagalpur. Says people of Bihar deserve quality education, better law and order and improved infrastructure and investment. Opposition parties step up Bihar election campaign. Rahul Gandhi of the Congress and RJD leader Tejasvi Yadav hold their first joint rally at Nevada. The FATF keeps Pakistan on its grey list for not doing enough to curb terrorism. Calls for more action against terror groups operating on its soil. In a bid to cool down retail onion prices, the central government asks states and union territories to take the kitchen staple from the central buffer stock for retail intervention, imposes a stock limit of 25 metric tons for wholesalers and 2 metric tons for retailers till 31st December. The central government borrows and transfers 6,000 crore rupees as a first installment of GST compensation shortfall to 16 states and 2 union territories, including Maharashtra, Gujarat, Bihar, Assam, Delhi and Jammu and Kashmir. Prime Minister Modi says India faring better than some countries in the fight against COVID-19. Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan reviews the situation in 18 districts of Uttar Pradesh, reminds people to follow social distancing during festive season. A vaccine candidate developed by Bharat Biotech and ICMR cleared for phase 3 of trials. Prime Minister Modi will inaugurate 3 projects in Gujarat on 21st October. He will give a major push to the agriculture sector in the state with the launch of a program for farmers. He will also inaugurate a hospital and a ropeway at Girnar. And Trump and Biden square off in the last U.S. presidential debate before the 3rd November election. Trump talks about a COVID-19 vaccine within weeks, but Biden says anyone responsible for so many coronavirus deaths should not remain president. All right, let's start this edition of News Night with all the news from the poll-bound state of Bihar. Now, Prime Minister Modi on Friday launched NDA's Bihar election campaign from Sasaram. He flew down to Bihar on Friday, where he held 2 other public rallies at Gaya and Bhagalpur. Here's a report.
चुनाव के इतने दिन पहले ही स्पष्ट संदेश सुना दिया। इनका इतिहास बिहार को बीमारू बनाने का है। उन्हें आस-पास भी नहीं फटकने देंगे।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar on Friday, launched NDA's election campaign from Dehri on Son in Sasaram for assembly polls in Bihar.
भारत के संस्कार बा बिहार, आजादी के जय घोष बा बिहार, संपूर्ण क्रांति के शंखनाद बा बिहार।
कोरोना वायरस का दौर चला पूरे दुनिया में, लेकिन उसको नियंत्रित करने के लिए श्रद्धेय मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में इस देश में काफी पहल हुई और हम लोगों ने बिहार में इनके द्वारा जारी गाइडलाइन के मुताबिक सब काम करने की कोशिश की है। जांच का भी दर बिहार में हम लोगों ने काफी अच्छा करने में सफलता प्राप्त की है। अब जो रिकवरी रेट है बिहार में वो लगभग 94% है।
In Sasaram, Prime Minister Modi specifically mentioned the historic step taken by the NDA government last year in August for the abrogation of Article 370, which ensured that everyone in Jammu and Kashmir secured the rights and privileges available to citizens all over the country. Slamming opposition for doing politics on this issue, Prime Minister said that these parties want to bring it back if they come to power.
जम्मू कश्मीर से आर्टिकल 370 हटने का इंतजार देश बरसों से कर रहा था या नहीं, लेकिन आज ये लोग इस फैसले को पलटने की बात कर रहे हैं। जो बिहार अपने बेटे बेटियों को सीमा पर देश की रखवाली के लिए भेजता है, क्या ये उसकी भावना का अपमान नहीं है?
Reminding people of the glorious past of Gaya ji in his second rally at Gaya, Prime Minister said that Gaya ji was once a center of knowledge, faith and spirituality. However, Naxal violence flourished here during RJD's 15-year-old rule in Bihar.
ये कितनी बड़ी विडंबना है कि जहां भगवान बुद्ध को ज्ञान प्राप्त हुआ, उस धरती को नक्सली हिंसा और जघन्य हत्याकांडों में झोंक दिया गया। बीते वर्षों में बिहार के इस हिस्से को नक्सलियों के आतंक से मुक्ति दिलाने के लिए कड़े कदम उठाए गए।
Prime Minister said that some hard steps are being taken to tackle Naxal violence. He added that his government is trying to re-establish the glorious history of Bihar in the education system with the help of institutes like IIT and IIM. While addressing another rally in Bhagalpur, Prime Minister spoke about the Varanasi-Haldia waterway, facilitating the navigation of commercial vessels through the river Ganga. Prime Minister said that all the cities along the river Ganga in Bihar, including Bhagalpur, will benefit from this step. Referring to the construction of cold storage facilities in smaller towns, Prime Minister said that this will greatly help the farmers of mangoes, maize, lychee and bananas. Since the assembly poll is being held in COVID era, all the guidelines including social distancing and other measures are being followed during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's election rally. The thermal screening was conducted for those who came to listen to Prime Minister's address at public meetings. Besides, RT-PCR tests were also conducted in case there was a need for that. After that, they were allowed entry into venue with instructions for following social distancing norms. Prime Minister will address a total of 12 election public meetings in Bihar, with inputs from Anuj Yadav in Sasaram, Neeraj Singh from Gaya and Yogesh Sheetal from Bhagalpur. News Night Desk, DD India.
ये भैया 2020 मोदी के संग नीतीश, अरे बिहारी सब पे 20 मोदी के संग नीतीश।
विकास की ओर तेजी से बढ़त बाद अब बिहार के कोई बीमारू बेबस राज्य नहीं कह सके।
मोदी जी विकास पुरुष है, भाग विधाता है। तो इंडिया की सरकार बनेगी और नीतीश कुमार ही मुख्यमंत्री होंगे। 5 बजे पहले कोई बाहर नहीं निकलता था, आज के डेट में
प्लांटेन की हम लोग की जरूरत नहीं है,
उजाला हो जाता है।
डिजिटल इंडिया का जमाना है।
मोदी जी नेता महान, हमारे देशवा किसान। कैसे खुशहाल होबे मजदूर किसान एकराला मोदी जी बनैलन प्लान.
Now, for their part, the opposition parties stepped up the campaign too. Rahul Gandhi of the Congress and RJD's Tejasvi Yadav held their first joint rally at Nevada. Yadav promised 10 lakh government jobs for the Bihar youth.
As elections for the poll-bound state of Bihar gears up, campaigning of several political parties was at its peak on Friday. The RJD Congress and the left camp came together to campaign as the Grand Alliance. RJD leader Tejasvi Yadav and former Congress President Rahul Gandhi were seen campaigning together for the first time. Addressing the Mahagathbandhan election rally in Nevada district's Hisuwa, RJD chief Tejasvi Yadav once again reiterated his promise of providing employment to nearly 10 lakh youth of the state. Tejasvi Yadav not only questioned the state's ruling NDA alliance on the issue of special status for the development of Bihar, but also announced the departure of Chief Minister Nitish Kumar on 10th November.
कुछ लोग चाहेंगे जात के नाम पे लड़ाएंगे, कुछ लोग धर्म के नाम पे लड़ाएंगे, लेकिन बिहार के लोग काम के मुद्दे पे लड़ेंगे, किसान मजदूर के मुद्दे पे लड़ेंगे. 9 नवंबर को लालू जी का रिहाई होगा. 9 नवंबर को मेरा जन्मदिन भी है और 10 तारीख को नीतीश जी का विदाई है.
On the other side, Rahul Gandhi, who held his first rally in the state, chose to bring up the India and China LAC issue in a state election. Putting the central government in the dock, Rahul Gandhi questioned several decisions taken.
चाइना की सेना हिंदुस्तान के अंदर है. सवाल ये है कि जब चाइना हमारी जमीन के अंदर आए तो हमारी प्रधानमंत्री ने हमारे वीरों का अपमान करते हुए ये क्यों बोला कि हिंदुस्तान के अंदर कोई नहीं आया. सवाल भाइयों और बहनों ये है.
Meanwhile, AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi, who is contesting elections in Bihar, attacked the BJP's promise of providing free vaccine to the people of Bihar. Whereas Lok Janshakti Party chief Chirag Paswan thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for remembering his father Ramvilas Paswan in Sasaram's rally, he thanked Prime Minister for remembering his father as a son, and this made him emotional. Chirag has chosen to contest separately from NDA. For the first phase of assembly elections going on in Bihar, votes will be cast for 71 seats in the state on 28th October. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, moving on, the Financial Action Task Force, or the FATF, the world's top anti-terrorism monitoring group, voted to keep Pakistan on a grey list after the Imran Khan government's failure to fully comply with a 27-point action plan handed to it. But the watchdog did not let Pakistan's status change, mostly in view of Pakistan's inability to substantially deliver on 6 of the 27 action points.
Regarding Pakistan, Pakistan remains on our increased monitoring list, the so-called grey list. The plenary recognized that Pakistan has made progress. The government has now completed 21 of 27 items of its action plan. The government of Pakistan has signaled its commitment to complete the rest of its action plan, but it is clear, even though Pakistan has made progress, it needs to do more. Pakistan cannot stop now. It needs to continue to carry out reforms, in particular to implement targeted financial sanctions and prosecute and sanctions those financing terrorism.
The central government has evolved a special borrowing window to address the shortfall in the GST collection during 2020-2021. Now, 21 states and 2 union territories opted for this special window involving back-to-back borrowing coordinated by the Ministry of Finance. Out of these, 5 states did not have any shortfall on account of GST compensation. On Friday, the central government borrowed and transferred 6,000 crore rupees as first tranche to 16 states, namely Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Goa, Gujarat, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Meghalaya, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Tripura, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand and 2 union territories, Delhi and Jammu and Kashmir. Now, the borrowing is at an interest rate of 5.19%. It's intended to make weekly releases of 6,000 crore to the states. The tenor of borrowing is expected to be broadly in the range of 3 to 5 years. Now, Prime Minister Modi says India is faring better than some countries in the fight against COVID-19. Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan reviewed the situation in 18 districts of Uttar Pradesh. He reminded people to follow all COVID protocols during festive season. Now, a vaccine candidate developed by Bharat Biotech and ICMR cleared for the phase 3 of human trials. Here's more.
The battle against COVID-19 pandemic is on, and the union government along with states is leaving no stone unturned to curb the pandemic. More testing along with right course of treatment has led to a higher recovery rate, resulting in an all-time low fatality rate. On Friday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while addressing a poll rally in Bihar, stressed about the need to be vigilant, but at the same time said that the country is in a much better state compared to many developed countries.
बिहार के लोग इतनी बड़ी आपदा का डटकर मुकाबला कर रहे हैं। कोरोना महामारी से बचने के लिए तेजी से जो फैसले लिए गए हैं, जिस तरह बिहार के लोगों ने काम किया, नीतीश जी के नेतृत्व में एनडीए सरकार ने काम किया, उसके नतीजे आज दिख रहे हैं। दुनिया के बड़े बड़े अमीर देशों की हालत किसी से भी छिपी नहीं है।
During Prime Minister's election rally, all guidelines and SOPs of COVID-19 were followed. 2 stages were erected on a platform keeping in mind physical distancing norms. Even in the stage, chairs were kept at a distance to follow COVID protocols. For people who came to attend Prime Minister's rally were provided with sanitizers. Physical distancing protocols were kept in mind during the course of the rally. During his election rally, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India has leaped across a significant milestone in its fight against COVID. Active cases in the nation now stand at 6,95,509, which comprise merely 8.96% of the total cases. The active caseload of the country has fallen below 7 lakh for the first time after 2 months. India is also reporting a higher number of recoveries. The total recovered cases are nearly 70 lakh. The recovered cases are nearly 10 times more than the active cases. 73,979 patients have recovered and discharged in the last 24 hours. The national recovery rate has further progressed to 89.53%, while the fatality rate has further dropped to 1.51%. Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan held a meeting through video conferencing to review COVID-19 preparedness and measures for ensuring COVID-appropriate behavior with the Health and Medical Education Minister and other senior officials of Uttar Pradesh. Union Health Minister said that nation will be in a better position to fight corona if adequate precautions are taken in the coming festival and winter season.
अगर अगले 3 महीने हमने प्रिकॉशंस, सावधानियां पूरा विजिलेंट रहकर और जहां तक हो सके फेस्टिवल्स को अपने परिवार के साथ घर में मनाने, ये सारी जो छोटी छोटी बातें हैं, इनको आग्रह पूर्वक सारे सरकारों को, सभी स्वयंसेवी संस्थाओं को, अधिकारियों को अपने अपने क्षेत्र में फैलाने की आवश्यकता है।
Centre along with states is working round the clock for production of vaccine. In another major update for coronavirus vaccine in India, Covaxin, the drug developed by Bharat Biotech in collaboration with ICMR, has been granted permission to conduct the 3rd phase of clinical trials. Trials will begin from the first week of November and will be conducted on over 22,000 volunteers at 19 places. India is the hub of vaccine manufacturing in the world, producing, as UN estimates, 60% of vaccines globally. With inputs from Nitendra Singh, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Now, in a bid to cool down retail onion prices, the central government asked states and union territories to take the kitchen staple from the central buffer stock for retail intervention. It imposed a stock limit of 25 metric tons for wholesalers and 2 metric tons for retailers till 31st December.
The centre has taken a big step to keep the prices of onions in check and ensure its supply to citizens. The Essential Commodities Amendment Act 2020 provides for the circumstances for imposition of stock limit under extraordinary price rise. The prices of onions have increased by more than 100% when compared with average of last 5 years. Thus, the stock limit on the onions has been imposed with effect from Friday, which is 25 metric tons for wholesalers and 2 metric tons for retailers for a period up to 31st December 2020. The centre is also disposing onions to various state governments according to the requirements.
अब ये जो स्टॉक लिमिट्स लगाए गए हैं, अब इसके बाद ये अंदाज़ा लगाया जाएगा कि किसके किसके पास उस स्टॉक लिमिट से अधिक अनियन अवेलेबल है. इसका मैसेज ये है कि no one is to hoard the onions and manipulate the prices, जिसका नुकसान आम कंज्यूमर को पूरे देश में सहन करना पड़े. That is the very strong message that we are giving out.
The price rise observed in onions since the second week of September required proactive steps to be taken.
जो न्यूली अमेंडेड लॉ है उसके प्रोविजंस को एक्टिवेट करना पड़ा. प्राइस इंक्रीज वाज द ट्रिगर. इसी एक्ट का एक्टिवेट करना, एक्सपोर्ट के ऊपर रेस्ट्रिक्शन लगाना, इंपोर्ट्स को लिबरलाइज करना और बफर स्टॉक को रिलीज करना, ये चारों स्टेप्स जो हैं वो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने लिए हैं.
To tide over the present situation, the government has stepped up disposal of onions through the built-up onion buffer stock from the Rabi onion 2020 of 1 lakh metric tons. The release of onion from the buffer stock is being carried out swiftly but in a calibrated manner from the second half of September 2020. Further, onions are also being disposed of through open market sales. This will be stepped up further to bring down the price rise. An estimated kharif crop of 37 lakh metric tons is also likely to start arriving in the mandis that will add to the availability of onions. With Ajay Vikram Singh, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate 3 projects in Gujarat on 24th October. He will give a major push to the agriculture sector in the state with the launch of a program for farmers. He will also inaugurate a hospital and a ropeway at Girnar. Here's more.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate 3 key projects in Gujarat on Saturday via video conferencing. PM will launch the Kisan Suryodaya Yojana for the farmers of Gujarat. Under this scheme, farmers of Gujarat will be able to avail power supply from 5 am to 9 pm. The state government has allocated a budget of 3,500 crore rupees for installing transmission infrastructure under this scheme by 2023. 234 transmission lines of 66 kilowatt with a total length of 3,490 circuit kilometers will be established under the project, in addition to 220 kV substations. Prime Minister will also inaugurate the ropeway at Girnar. Initially, there will be 25 to 30 cabins with a capacity of 8 people per cabin. A distance of 2.3 kilometers will now be covered in just 7.5 minutes through the ropeway. In addition to this, the ropeway will also provide a scenic view of the lush green beauty surrounding the Girnar mountain.
ये बहुत ही एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी का रोपवे बना है. वर्ल्ड के हाई सेफ्टी स्टैंडर्ड्स और सेफ्टी सिस्टम्स को ध्यान में रखते हुए सौराष्ट्र के लिए ये बहुत बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट है. 130 करोड़ की इन्वेस्टमेंट है और अभी यात्रियों जो 4 घंटा लगता था ऊपर जाने में, अभी 10 मिनट के अंदर में ऊपर जाके दर्शन कर सकें.
Prime Minister will also inaugurate the Pediatric Heart Hospital attached with the UN Mehta Institute of Cardiology and Research Centre and a mobile application for telecardiology at the Ahmedabad Civil Hospital.
It is one of the biggest cardiac super hospital in the world, in the country, and it is one of the biggest in the world. And in this hospital capacity, we are having 12 modular operation theatre. They are model operation. They are infection proof, and out of that 6 are belong to pediatrics.
The UN Mehta Institute of Cardiology is undergoing expansion at the cost of 470 crore rupees.
The pediatric cardiac hospital at the UN Mehta Heart Hospital in Ahmedabad is going to be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This hospital was his brainchild back when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and this hospital now has advanced technologies for healthcare facilities.
After the expansion, it will become one of the biggest single super specialty cardiac hospitals in the world. Inauguration of these three key projects will give a major push to agriculture and healthcare infrastructure in Gujarat. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, now take a look at what else is making news around India in our National Roundup segment.
Veteran Maharashtra politician Eknath Khadse joined the Nationalist Congress Party (NCP) in the presence of party chief Sharad Pawar. Eknath Khadse had quit BJP on 21st of October. Maharashtra government has announced a package of rupees 10,000 crores for the rain-affected parts of the state. The amount will be disbursed before Diwali. The announcement was made by Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray at a press conference after chairing a review meeting on the damages caused by torrential rains that have lashed the state in the last 3 months. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath attended the inauguration of the Mahila Help Desk in all 1,535 police stations of Uttar Pradesh as part of Mission Shakti. The Mission Shakti is a special awareness campaign to ensure safety and security of women and children. In Maharashtra, a complaint has been filed against actor Kangana Ranath at a Mumbai court for her tweet against Mumbai police. The complaint seeks action against Ranath. The court will hear the matter on November 10th. In Augusta Westland case, Delhi's Rouse Avenue Court has granted interim bail to businessman Rajiv Saxena till December 11th. CBI submitted before the court that it will file a reply to Rajiv Saxena's bail plea. Veteran cricketer and India's first World Cup winning captain Kapil Dev underwent angioplasty during the early hours of Friday in New Delhi after suffering a heart attack. The hospital said his condition was stable. Karnataka government has decided to reopen colleges for classes from November 17th. The classes will be held in a blended manner with the option of attending classes either in person or through online classes. Those who wish to attend the classes in person will have to carry a consent letter from their parents.
Moving on, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar tweeted, I quote him here, MEA and our High Commission in Nairobi are working on the relief and return of 33 Indians stuck in Mogadishu, Somalia. The High Commission has taken up their predicament with the Somalian authorities. He further says that we are in touch with the Somali embassy in India and hoped for an early resolution, unquote. The Department of Posts released a commemorative postage stamp on the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was the chief guest at the event. The Secretary West in the Indian Foreign Ministry and Secretary Post were present on the occasion. Now, in the past, the Department of Posts has released similar commemorative postage stamps on the UN's 9th, 40th and 50th anniversaries in the years 54, 85 and 1995. And the minister said that as a founding member of the United Nations, India was deeply invested in the UN's success and has been at the forefront of UN peacekeeping operations as well.
As we look forward to beginning our 8th term as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, beginning January 2020, it is important at this historic juncture of the 75-year-long journey of the UN, we recommit ourselves to join hands and work with vigor and dedication to bring the goals and objectives of the UN closer to the aspirations of its member states and, more importantly, to the aspirations of our peoples. Let us work together to make this one United Nations that we have the best possible United Nations there can be.
And now to a deep dive into US election 2020. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden fought over how to tame the raging coronavirus during the campaign's closing debate. They largely shelved the rancor that overshadowed their previous face-off in favor of a more substantive exchange, which highlighted their vastly different approaches to the major domestic and foreign policy challenges facing the United States. It remains to be seen if Trump, who is trailing in the race, managed to change the trajectory of the campaign. Now, more than 47 million votes have already been cast, and there are fewer undecided voters than at this point in previous elections.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden offered sharply contrasting views on the still raging coronavirus pandemic at Thursday's final presidential debate, seeking to persuade the few remaining undecided voters 12 days before the November 3rd election. Trump adopted a more restrained tone than he did during the chaotic first presidential debate in September, when he repeatedly interrupted Biden. But Thursday's clash still featured plenty of personal attacks between the two men, who evinced little respect for each other, and Trump kept fact-checkers busy by leveling unfounded corruption accusations at Biden and his family. The matchup came just as several states marked record resurgences of COVID-19.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
It was one of Trump's last chances to defend his track record as president, and while it never developed into a shouting match like the last debate, the two clashed sharply over Trump's approach to the pandemic.
We're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that.
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it.
The two candidates quickly pivoted to Trump's repeated accusations that Biden and his son Hunter engaged in unethical practices in China and Ukraine.
I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you.
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing.
The New York Times had reported earlier this week that Trump maintains his own bank account in China, but no evidence has been verified to support the president's allegations against Biden. And after a back and forth, Biden called those accusations false and accused Trump of trying to distract Americans. Biden defended his family and said unequivocally that he had never made a single penny from a foreign country, before pivoting to accuse Trump of trying to distract Americans. He accused Trump of avoiding paying taxes, citing a New York Times investigation that reported Trump's tax returns show he paid almost no federal income tax over more than 20 years.
I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
I get treated worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly.
Trump's effort to uncover dirt on Hunter Biden's Ukraine business ties led to his eventual impeachment proceedings. The candidates clashed over health care, China policy, and after months of anti-racial protests, race relations. with Biden saying Trump was one of the most racist presidents in history. The televised encounter in Nashville, Tennessee, represented one of Trump's last remaining opportunities to reshape a campaign dominated by a pandemic that has killed more than 221,000 people in the United States. Trump has trailed Biden in opinion polls for months, though the contest is tighter in some battleground states likely to decide the election. A record 47 million Americans have already cast their ballots, eclipsing the total early voting from 2016. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
All right, time now for our In Focus segment in which we are discussing about Trump and Biden spar over coronavirus, climate and China. Joining me are two very special guests, Ambassador Mohan Kumar and Dr. Harinder Sekhon. Ambassador Kumar is the chairman of the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, a leading New Delhi-based think tank funded by the government. He served as India's ambassador to France and Bahrain in the past. And Dr. Sekhon is an analyst on strategic affairs. She has over 3 decades of research, writing and teaching experience on various aspects of India-US relations, US policy and strategy in Asia, and regional security challenges in South and East Asia as well. Dr. Sekhon and Ambassador Kumar, welcome to News Night. Quick, short comments from the two of you. The quick takeaways and the highlights from the Trump-Biden debate. Who stood out and why? Starting with you, Ambassador Kumar.
Sure, things have changed very much. If you ask me to summarize broadly, I would say that Trump sounded and looked presidential compared to the last debate. And I thought presidential candidate Joe Biden held his ground. So I would not say that the debate has been a huge advantage for one or the other. So you're going to basically walk into this election with people already having made up their mind. The only indication I see is voter enthusiasm. I'm not sure 46 million people have ever voted in the US before election day. That might give you a hint or two about what the outcome will be.
Dr. Sekhon, I found President Trump unusually restrained. Some would say abnormally restrained, because one does not know how that will play with his constituency, his base, so to speak. But what did you make of the last Trump-Biden debate? Any big takeaways or highlights in your estimation?
I think this one definitely was a more moderated stance by both the candidates and Trump especially. After the first debate, which became
very
quite
chaotic,
a vitriolic attack on one another, and both of them were outdoing each other in cutting one another. So I think the Trump has definitely been told to tone down his tenor and keep his temper under control. And he has acted very responsibly for a change, which is a good thing. He was presidential, he was restrained, but there were flashes of anger on both sides. But Biden was able to deflect the criticism which Trump heaped on him over his son, Hunter Biden. So I think both candidates were evenly paced in this debate. And Trump has definitely, on the whole, regained some ground which he may have lost in the first debate. But, from here on, as Ambassador Kumar has just mentioned, the voters have already made up their minds. They've decided. About 7 million votes, postal ballot votes have already been cast, and the advance voting has already taken place. So I think from here, it's just the countdown, and we wait for that.
Absolutely. Ambassador Kumar, the debate was structured in a manner that there were 6 broad issues, starting with the COVID-19 pandemic, going all the way across to national security and climate change and leadership, including American families and race relations. Looking at the replies and the back and forth between Trump and Biden, what resonated with you the most?
No, I think what resonated most with me was 2 vastly different visions of the United States. 2 assessments of where the United States is today. And I thought the punchline was when President Trump said, "We are learning to live with it," and Joe Biden pounced on it and said, "We are learning to die with it." So I thought that presented a contrast as far as coronavirus is concerned. As far as the other issues are concerned, basically both sides, I think, holding their ground, really. I didn't see any knockout punch, to use the boxing terminology. But that's why I say that it is two different realities of the United States, frankly. Because President Trump is basically arguing that everything is hunky-dory, that by the time winter comes, it'll all be fine. And you have presidential candidate Joe Biden saying exactly the opposite. So in a way, the Indian Hindi word that comes to mind is Maya, really. Both of them struggling with really descriptions of reality, whether you qualify one as Maya and the other as reality. And so it depends really on how the audience interprets these statements, which is why I say that it's pretty much the election is, as far as I'm concerned, people have made up their minds. It's a very small number which haven't made up their minds, and it is they who are likely to be influenced by this debate. But I'm not sure that is significant enough to swing the election one way or the other.
All right, point taken. Dr. Sekhon, now, irrespective of who wins come November 3, help our viewers understand Trump 2.0 versus a Biden in the White House. Will we see more of the same, so to speak, under Trump 2.0, or will there be a radical change if Biden wins on the 3rd of November?
See, as far as overall policy is concerned, there's a broad consensus between both parties.
Right.
So I don't see any radical change, but what is going to happen over here is who is going to be best placed to lead the recovery.
I see.
Now, Trump has been in a denial mode throughout, and he feels that he's got the coronavirus epidemic. He's come up with the best response, and he has had this epidemic under control. He tried to brush off under the carpet, even in yesterday's debate, by saying that Florida had spiked, but it is under control. And so he thinks that he's got a great grip on it, whereas Biden is trying to show that America is facing a deep economic downturn. And I think when it comes to the two candidates, Biden feels he's better equipped to lead the recovery process. Because of his background, when he was vice president, the 2008 economic downturn had taken place. And he feels that he is the one who had helped President Obama devise a policy to come out of that downturn, economic downturn, the economic crash. And he can do this again. So I think the most important aspect of whoever comes to power is going to be American recovery, economic recovery. And also, this then brings the focus on which, whether America is going to turn inwards looking or outward after this crisis. Is Trump going to be more protectionist? Is he going to be more inward looking? And is he going to tighten the national borders further? And whereas Biden, I think, with Trump, do we see more of the America first in his agenda? And I think it's going to be a continuation of that. Even on India, when he talked of climate, he has come up, the statements keep changing radically. Whereas Biden, on the other hand, is going to talk about the importance of building coalitions, especially the transatlantic coalition, countries working together to overcome the effects of the pandemic. That's what I feel is going to be a major difference between the two. Both are going to focus inward on American recovery, but Trump on a more isolationist path, wanting to do it alone, and Biden is going to look for coalitions and look for to international bodies, maybe like the World Health Organization, and even in the strategic domain, it's going to be, he's talked about NATO, etc. So that is where we're going to see a major difference. And it's not going to be so much about India, or maybe you're going to come back to that later. It's all going to be about the domestic constituency, the healthcare, Obamacare. I think those are the issues which are going to become very important with the Biden presidency.
Indeed.
Whereas Trump is going to carry on with the same policies, maybe with a little bit of tweaking here and there.
Right, Ambassador Kumar, you've been a practitioner of diplomacy now from your vantage, your perspective. In the segment on national security, predictably, China figured, Russia figured, Iran figured. But looking ahead of the next 4 years, how do you see issues such as the Indo-Pacific or the Quad or trade play out under Trump or Biden from India's perspective?
I think I don't see too much of a radical shift. In fact, one of the things that bothers the Chinese is that there is bipartisan consensus in the United States when it comes to seeing China as a strategic rival and even a revisionist power. So that is not going to change too much even with Biden. I think Trump 2 administration, the second administration of a leader, tends to be much bolder because he doesn't have to seek re-election.
Right.
So in that sense, you might see the real Trump emerging if he wins. But even if he doesn't, and you have a Biden administration, I don't think the idea that somehow the United States will go soft on China is, I think, a misplaced idea. My sense is there is bipartisan consensus and the United States will go ahead. In fact, I would argue the fact that the 2+2 meeting is going to happen in just a couple of days from now,
indeed,
is an essential signal that bipartisan consensus. I cannot believe that we haven't consulted, at least informally, with the advisors of Joe Biden. So there is bipartisan consensus both with regard to the nature of China and with regard to cooperation with India. So I'm actually left with a complacent feeling that there is bipartisan consensus in the United States when it comes to dealing with India, when it comes to dealing with the security issues which are important for India, and the fact that we are having this 2+2 meeting. And on Indo-Pacific, I wouldn't see a huge departure with Mr. Joe Biden.
Right, so no radical change or departure, says Ambassador Kumar. Dr. Sekhon, as Ambassador Kumar pointed out, the fact that Pompeo will visit New Delhi barely a week before the election speaks to the importance of the American position or view on the Indo-Pacific or the emerging situation architecture in this part of the world. From your perspective, how do you view a Trump versus Biden policy or stand on issues such as the Indo-Pacific or the Quad or China generally?
I reiterate what has been said earlier, that there is a broad consensus in policy as far as both the parties, and this is what I had said in my opening comments as well. And even if you look at the Indo-Pacific, the nomenclature may have gained popularity now under the Trump administration, but the US pivot to Asia and the importance of the Asia-Pacific, as it was called at that time, began with the Obama administration. And even as far as India is concerned, I think it was George W. Bush who gave us the nuclear deal. So India has become very important since 1992. And coming to Pompeo, you know, the US-India defense partnership has been a work in progress since 1992, when India also started looking towards the United States of America after the fall of the Soviet Union. And that is when we looked to the United States for those high-end computers and some kind of technical cooperation with the United States. And the rest is history, because it has been a steady progression since then, despite, but for that minor hiccup in 1998 when we came under sanctions. But after 2001, 9/11, there has been no, after 9/11, there's been no looking back. And US-India relations, despite a Republican administration or a Democrat administration, have gone from strength to strength. And coming to the 2+2 dialogue, the Democrats or the Republicans, strategically there is a commonality of interest, and Obama had called India the most defining partnership of the 21st century. And we saw that this continued, this trajectory continued under Trump. And after this election, the next administration is going to carry on with this policy to its logical course, on its logical course.
Ambassador Kumar, looking from the India-US relations in particular now over the next 4 years, We've seen India-US ties evolve over the last 2 decades and more. What do you think is the next big idea on the table as we speak? Would we see more of a robust cooperation and collaboration on the Indo-Pacific, or some other areas of interest of mutual concern or interest for both Washington and New Delhi?
No, I see the strategic leg of the relationship going from strength to strength. This would be Indo-Pacific. This would be the Quad. This would be the resilient supply chains. This could include defense sales, especially when it comes to unmanned aerial vehicles and so on. To be honest with you, I think more attention needs to be focused on 2 issues. One is trade and investment, which has been the weakest leg of the relationship, and I think that needs a little bit more attention from the principals. When I say principals, I'm talking of the Prime Minister of India and the President of the United States, whoever it might be. I think this has got to be handled at that level, because I see the dossier on trade and investment expanding a little bit in terms of differences. That needs to be sorted out. The other thing that we have to sort out with the United States is in the area of electronic commerce and digitalization, where we have some differences. I don't think these differences are unbridgeable. What I am saying is that both electronic commerce and trade investment needs attention at the top level, because this needs to be sorted out. And then, of course, there are issues like H-1B and so on, which I think we can talk with the United States. So what I would say is that while the strategic side, the space side, the science and technology side is galloping ahead, I see trade and investment and digital world trying to catch up. So we will have to focus a little bit more on H-1B, the digital area, and the trade and investment area. That's what I would do, so that the relationship becomes balanced and substantial.
Indeed. Dr. Sekhon, how do you think India's interests in South Asia, in our neighborhood, namely Afghanistan or Iran for that matter, play out under a Trump 2.0 or a Biden?
I think the challenges for the United States have also got multiplied during the last 4 years of the Trump administration. Obama had worked out some kind of a deal with Iran, but I think the Iranians have adopted a very tough stance. So a Biden presidency will not mean a cakewalk for the United States as far as Iran is concerned. And I think this is where India and the United States, India could in fact assist the United States in rebuilding this relationship with Iran, and hopefully there would be less pressure on India over Chabahar as well. And we withstood that pressure from the Trump administration, but somehow that has gone off the radar. And similarly in Afghanistan, I think the US policy is very clear. Despite, every administration, every President Obama had an exit strategy. Trump won his first election with this as one of the charters that he is going to bring the troops back home. But I think the United States has realized that they cannot leave Afghanistan to its fate. So the challenges are going to be more or less the same. And if the United States stays, India and the US, I think, are now on the same page. Initially, I would say that when Obama came, we always used to look, we always felt that India, the US looked at South Asia through the Pakistan prism. But this is not happening anymore. And the US treats India as an important partner in the region. They are also engaged in a more positive manner with Myanmar, Bangladesh, and I think Pompeo is also going to Sri Lanka. So all this actually helps India, and I think it also gives an opportunity for these two democracies to exchange views and to work together for peace and security of this region, because we are on the same page on a lot of issues, China included, which has been a major change in US policy, post Ladakh, post Galwan, and even post Doklam. So I think we are talking on the same lines, and as was mentioned, It is the economic part of the relationship which really needs to be built.
All right,
of
so
course,
the economic part of the relationship is something to look forward to, says Dr. Sekhon. On that note, Dr. Sekhon, Ambassador Kumar, thank you so much for making time to be with us on Newsnight. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, now moving on, even after decades of research, no one knows exactly how many snow leopards are there in India. Now, these big and extremely elusive cats still remain elusive. Now, a rapid estimate of the economic value of some prominent services generated from snow leopard habitats in India is nearly $4 billion per year. Now, the International Snow Leopard Day was celebrated on Friday to safeguard the snow leopard. Tapas Bhattacharya reports.
Altitudes in the steep mountains of Himalayas and in a bitterly cold climate, snow leopards are among the most difficult of the world's top predators to study. The ghost of mountains, as snow leopards are known, are extremely elusive, and thus it is even more challenging to keep a track on their numbers. To safeguard the species, the International Snow Leopard Day was organized on Friday. The celebration was presided by Babul Supriyo, Minister of State, Environment, Forest and Climate Change. On the occasion, a booklet was also released by Minister of the State, Babul Supriyo. The meeting was also attended by representatives from Bhutan, Mongolia, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan from the snow leopard range countries.
I'm very elated to know that India is one of the 12 countries in the world where snow leopards exist. What is encouraging today is to see so many countries in the international forum actually putting their heart out to ensure that this majestic animal actually gets to live the life they deserve.
Snow leopard is the apex predator in the Indian Himalayas and is considered as the flagship for conservation of the high altitude landscape. Recent studies indicate that the Indian snow leopard habitat provides ecosystem services worth $4 billion every year in snow leopard landscapes. India has identified the snow leopard as the flagship species for the high altitude Himalayas. In India, their geographical range encompasses a large part of the western Himalayas, including Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Ladakh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh, totaling a total transboundary range of over 130,000 square kilometers above the 3,000 meter altitude in the high Himalayas.
India is such a country where we receive a lot of support, administrative wise as well as the financial support which is required for species conservation, and that is also perhaps replicable in other countries where they do not get such kind of support. India's involvement of the local population in the management of the forest and wildlife, what we have initiated, the joint forestry management. So this participatory mode of management is also unique and replicable for other countries.
If you want to be healthy, you need your ecosystem to be healthy. And there is this one species that serves as a thermometer for the health of the third pole, the mountains of Central and South Asia. And it is no surprise that cultures and religions across the region revere this predator, for it is the custodian of not just the mountains but entire ecosystems.
India has been party to the Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program since 2013. Under this program, each snow leopard range country has developed national priorities and identified large landscapes to support viable population of snow leopards. Tapas Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
And that's a wrap, but news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Don't forget, it's a simple task. Just wear a mask. Join DD India's Mask Up campaign to beat COVID-19. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.